it blows my mind to think about how complex this tiny little less than a particle of matter is.
You know, it's even more complex than that, Rick. When they found out that there's such a thing as DNA, and they examined the double helix, and they understood the relationship between DNA and RNA, and the fact that RNA is like a mapping that comes off of the DNA and then goes about telling other things what to do within a cell. We're looking at, we say DNA. When I went to school, there were chromosomes, there were genes, and nobody knew what the genes were. You know, it wasn't something that you got at
We
Levi's.
wore jeans. That was about all I knew.
Levi's and so forth. But in fact, you know, the double helix often contains billions of parts. Billions of parts. In fact, human helix, double helix of DNA, 3.2 billion parts. And not only that, but they have to be lined up in such a way that what they call the chirality has to be exact, a right hand, left hand. It's essential for these things to function. They must be in a specific order. And again, the illustration of flipping a coin that you mentioned earlier to me, of taking a coin and flipping it, what was it,
110,000 times. And being able to and being able to rightly predict it 110,000 times in a row.
Okay. Pretty good.
Okay, and try flipping a coin and see if you can rightly predict it 10 times.
Yeah.
And then do 20. Then try to get to 50. Then try to get to 100. Then try to get to 1,000. Then to 110,000. Another illustration was winning 47 different state lotteries with just one ticket for each consecutively. 4,700. That's right.
State lotteries.
That's the level of chance that you're dealing with here. And you know, Bob, you said something about it would take great faith to say that this happened by chance. I would say it's not even. I'd say it's beyond great faith. Remember, Jonathan, a few weeks ago we were talking about faith and credulity.
Yes.
And credulity was believing in something with really no evidence. And, you know, boy, have I got a piece of land to sell you in Florida, that kind of a thing.
Right.
You know, that's gullibility. To me, when you look at chance in that realm, it's unfathomable to say, okay, science is based on just a random act that put these 3.2 billion parts together, and this is just in one little thing, one little that he said over there,
and in the right order.
You know, Rick, Michael Behe on page 150 of his book makes a comment that these creations of these basic cell parts, that are within the structure of the cell, working within this environment that was, we said, hostile. But nevertheless, one of these scientists, Stanley Miller, he quotes, said that he referred to it as the rock of the faith, that these things could take place by themselves, that this chemical could come together and become a useful protein.
And folks, I mean, when you're talking about the probability being so minute in terms of this happening, we're just talking about one little type of chemical and chemical reaction. In that cilia you were talking about, there were 45 different kinds of proteins, all of which have to be there for it to work. Without any one of them, the system breaks down. And those proteins by themselves cannot exist. Is this chance? How? I don't... anyway, go ahead.
There's another couple of factors. Not only in this cell do you have the DNA, RNA, and a lot of other things. Some of them ribosomes, mitochondria, lysosomes, and so forth that have specific functions. But you also have something that's referred to as regulatory proteins. And these regulatory proteins actually act as a kind of a dye through which, almost as if this spiral of this our DNA goes through to have itself self-corrected. Back in the 1970s, there was an article written in Scientific American, which I remember reading, which suggested that without this, cells would just randomly have the wrong. They wouldn't correct themselves. There would be errors, such as mutations. But they posited that this exists. Now they know that there is this regulatory protein process. They say without it, the DNA could have as many as 1 in 10,000 errors. With this regulatory protein, the number jumps from an error of 1 in a billion to 1 in 100 billion possibilities, which means virtually no possibility of error within a reproduction of a DNA cell, within a cell.
But it's all luck. It's all chance.
Well, some would like to think so.
And you know, again, folks, what we're doing is we're looking at this whole subject of intelligent design and saying, is it not scientifically? And do you notice that for this program to have not sat here and quoted, 100 scriptures in the first hour, that's very unusual.
It is. It really is.
But this is groundwork, I think, that is absolutely critical to understanding the credibility for the idea of intelligent design. You don't need, now it's strange for me to say this, but this is coming from Rick, you don't need the Bible to prove that intelligent design exists. All you need is an open eye to what science has found in the irreducibly complex parts that make us up.
I'm glad you mentioned the eye. There's a lot of folks who think that the eye could gradually become something from a light-sensitive spot to a cup-shaped light-sensitive spot, which would give an advantage through chance, an advantage of one kind of little critter running around with a light-sensitive cupped eye so he could see shadows over the one who doesn't have that, and he would disappear. On top of that, we have the multitude of cones and rods and all the sensitivity. And there's a very interesting challenge made by a fellow named Ken Miller, I think it is, who suggests that if God had created, or some intelligent force had created it, there wouldn't have made it with a blind spot in the eye. And that deserves some explanation too, but perhaps later on.
Okay, and we are actually running out of time in our first hour here. And folks, as we begin to conclude the first hour of conversation, what we're looking at, again, is the concept that intelligent design is behind the formulation and creation of the world. We're not looking at it yet from a scriptural standpoint. What we are looking at purely is from a scientific standpoint, examining the things that Darwin could not see, because technology had not gotten to a point where he could examine them. And you have to wonder if he said in his book that if things, if he could see these things and they proved otherwise, his theory would implode upon itself. You got to wonder what he'd think. In the second hour, we're going to look at some scriptural perspective, and also we're going to look at some perspective that says, I, Rick here, actually do believe in evolution. Now you say, what the heck? How can that be? Well, stay with us for the second hour, and we'll give you an explanation of that, along with a number of other things. For Jonathan, Rick, and Bob, this is Christian Questions. Is it intelligent design or evolution? We'll be back after the news. Till then, think about it.